Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is today, and welcome back. I hope that your week is unfolding beautifully and it's coming to a nice, easy close. We got one day to go, and then tomorrow is Friday. We're excited about that. We're very glad that you're here with us. Hello, locals. Just came on board. Great to see you, my friends. We've got some business to attend to today. Boy, do we ever. We got some election litigation updates. Whoa, NPR has given us this headline saying a judge is pausing part of Trump's sweeping executive order on voting. This is the executive order we talked about some time ago, where the president said, you got to be a citizen if you want to vote in our elections. The president came out, passed this executive order out of the White House, and under the pen of glory, back on March 25th. And then the Democrats sued. You remember, they sued like everybody. The DNC, the League of Women Voters, all of the superheroes over there. They sued everybody. It was like the DSCC, DCC. We covered the lawsuit, the original thing. But what has happened now is the judge has come back down and said, oh, citizenship, not that big of a deal. We'll pause everything. She wrote a big 120-page rant, as they tend to do out of the District of Columbia. It's just what they like to do. Have a glass of wine, just go wild, text their friends, Beryl Howell. Hey, Bear, what do you think about this, Turka? And then they write their big ranting screeds. So we'll hit the highlights. We'll see what's going on there and see what the order has in particular. So what's going to be happening right now as the election litigation unfolds? What's the current status? We'll, of course, go through that. We then are going to turn our attention to the ban in the military on the trans. And we saw this case is United States versus Emily Schilling. First name might be debatable, but it's coming out of the Ninth Circuit. And this was filed today, an application for a stay coming out of the Trump DOJ, submitted to Justice Kagan, saying, no, we can ban the trans out of the military. In fact, there's good precedent for this. And if we want them no longer to participate in this portion of American defense, then we're allowed to do that. And so they submitted this, an application for a stay coming in to the Supreme Court of the United States. So we'll go through that. So a little trans update. Can't wait to do that one. Coming up, then we're going to do an update on Kilmar and the other deportation cases, because in the Kilmar case, we did have an order staying the discovery process. Remember, Judge Zenas out of Maryland has said, well, we got to get to the bottom of this contract you have with El Salvador. We got to figure out where Kilmar is and what happened. Because El Salvador, even though it was really Guatemala. And ordered discovery into this thing. Then we got yesterday some sealed filings, and then we've got a stay on that discovery process. We don't know what's going on. Are they bringing him back? Are they moving him somewhere else? And I'm not real sure why the ACLU gangbang lawyers would agree to anything. So we'll talk about that. Coming up, we've also got some reaction on the other JGG case, the contempt case. Remember, that case had contempt stayed. And we have further developments on that because we also saw a motion in response that we'll read through from Lee Glorent. Or I don't know, we'll spend much time on that one. But just to flag it, there is an appeal afoot over there. So that's coming up. We'll also see there were other filings under seal in the AARP case, which turned into the WMM case. This was the one out of Texas. So the deportations are still happening. And then a bunch of reaction from Stephen Miller. Shout out. We were saying, where's Stephen yesterday? Oh, here he is. That's good. And we saw this poll. You may have seen this poll too, saying Americans back bringing Abrego Garcia back. Kilmar wife beater. Wow. Is that real? No. Sean Davis explaining why coming up. So we got some good stuff queued up. Jim Jordan's coming up. We got JD Vance was talking about the Kilmar sitch. So we'll save that for the end before Tom Homan comes out and obliterates the Democratic Party. politically speaking, on cable news. So lots of stuff queued up, my friends. Really glad that you're here and with us. We had a very fun members only stream this morning. Thanks for joining us. It was a little bit haphazard because we were waiting for the president to come out and speak, and then he came out and spoke for like 2 minutes and then head faked us all. We're like, bah! All these live streams were going, Trump's coming out, Netherlands, Norway, who was visiting? And they came and they were hanging out. And anyways, it was a fun members only stream. We had a lot of time to converse with one another, and we appreciate our membos. And welcome to our new membos. We'll be back tomorrow with the member stream, 12 noon Eastern. We'd love to have you join us. Click on the join button on YouTube or go to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And you can also check out the research files now public at the Lodge, watcherlodge.com. We're building in public over there. So if you'd like to come check what's going on over there, come join us. All right. And so now let's get into it on the day, because here's the sitch that has come down. We now have this order. A federal judge now reversing, at least for the moment, Trump's executive order that would have fortified our elections with proof of citizenship so that people could not participate in them unless they're citizens. Seems pretty obvious. This lawsuit was brought by the League of United Latin American Citizens. Wow. They want to make sure they have their rights here. Latin American citizens, okay? The Democratic National Committee sued on this case. The League of Women Voters also sued on this case. Their education fund all sued Trump and basically everybody. And this is coming down in response to this executive order that came down from Trump. And the judge is putting a pause on this for the time being, saying, remember, Trump wrote this. We read it. We're like, heck yeah, baby. That sounds good. Says purpose and policy, right? We got to actually have actual proof of citizenship, saying, look, India and Brazil, they tie voter ID to, biometric databases and more. But all we do is just have self-attestation. You just say, yeah, you fill out a form. They check a box. You get a ballot in the mail. You think I'm great. Now, while countries like Denmark and Sweden sensibly limit mail-in voting to those unable to vote in person and don't count late arriving votes and more, we do. We need free and fair and honest elections in America. Federal law establishes guidelines on this. And so we're going to start pushing this back into alignment with the actual law. But numerous states fail to comply with those laws. And they count ballots that come 3 days after the election day when they're like, oh, crap, we're down by how many? 15,000? Print 16,000. Additionally, federal laws are already in place. It prohibits foreign nationals from participating in the elections. And so what we're going to do is enforce the citizenship requirement. This is what made their heads go, whoa! Like, what good is our last 4 years of invasion operation if they can't vote? And the second prong of that is, what if their children are not citizens because they're here illegally and they're not subject to the jurisdiction thereof under the 14th Amendment, which has been misinterpreted for a long time since the Kilmar case in Supreme Court case, where actually the people at issue there were lawful residents. So you take out that pillar, you take out this pillar, they're in big trouble. So, of course, they sued. Now, the people who are behind all this are the same usual suspects. The Elias Law Group, okay, and the rest of the Democrats, they're back, womp womp. So they brought this dude out. They're celebrating today. They said, a federal judge today issued a preliminary injunction blocking multiple provisions of Trump's executive order brought by all the Democrats, okay? DNC, Democrat Governors Association, the Democrat Senatorial Campaign Committee, all right, Congressional Campaign Committee, all of them. When the Elias Law Group, Mark Elias, that guy, who testified in the Michael Sussman trial when they were suspected of criminal fraud and other crimes, although Mark Elias was not prosecuted, and Michael Sussman was acquitted because he got prosecuted in D.C. by John Durham, who botched the whole thing, says, all right, the New York Times reported the lawsuit represents one of the first moments where seemingly every arm of the party is pushing back with one voice. Okay, Democrats came screaming about it. We were laughing. We're like, damn, man, they got like everybody. They like woke up Joe Biden. They're like, ugh, should we get him? Like, no. Do we need him? Like, well, it's about the elections. Like, all right, go get him up. Joe. Yeah, they dragged him out here to sign this. So everybody, they got the auto pen. And we need to prove the auto pen again. So they flipped. We welcome the court's decision. Judge Colleen Collar Cottley is the judge. I think she's a Clinton appointee. She came out and issued the memo. So let's hit the highlights of the memo, just share it with you so you can see what they're doing and trying to make happen here. So 120-page memo in the opinion, and of course we got the order that accompanies it, but it's 120 pagers. Probably had a couple glasses of wine last night and was trying to be like her mentor, Beryl Howell. Oh yeah, this will be a fun night. Saying, all right, look, these cases are consolidated and they're about the separation of powers. Okay, here we go. On March 25th, they know nothing about that. These judges are usurping the proper execution of authority by the executive branch. Saying Trump issued an executive order purporting to change the rules of the federal elections. 5 provisions of the executive order are at issue in this memo. She's going to go through and detail them. 2A is about proof of citizenship, which is their golden swan. Saying the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of State are going to be required to open databases. DOJ will be involved. And then they will assess the citizenship of individuals before they get a voter registration form. Says the AG should enforce 2 statutes against the states that are already on the books. Now, 3 groups of plaintiffs filed motions for preliminary injunctions. The Latin Citizens, that's the group. League of United Latin American Citizens. Wow. Isn't that fun that they get to sue and then have democratically appointed judges reverse the will of the president who is lawfully elected by, American citizens, not Latin American citizens? Now, of course, you might say that there are American citizens who are also Latin American, right? Or you could interpret this as just saying, oh, because there are countries in Latin America. So are they citizens of those countries? What do we need this Latin for? Just get rid of it. But anyways, they're going to sue and take over the country because they've got the help of the DC judges. That's fun. So they're suing the Latin American citizens, saying they contend that under our Constitution and under the law, the president has no role in regulating federal elections. Now, their motions do not call upon the court to decide whether the executive order reflects good policy choices. Yes, it does. Of course, that's what they're doing. This is what this entire operation has been about by these judges, is substituting their good policy prescriptions for Trump's and just finding a good justification and basis to do that. No, I'm not going to apologize. Rather, this court's task is to decide whether the president can dictate those policies unilaterally or whether that power is reserved to Congress and the states alone. Writing, the many defendants in these consolidated cases, including the Latin American citizens, federal officers and agencies say little about that question. Now, they've offered almost no defense of the president's orders on the merits. Instead, they argue these suits have been brought by the wrong plaintiffs at the wrong time. You don't have standing. You can't sue. Get out of here. Now, because the court agrees with those threshold arguments in some instances, so they're like, well, you're kind of right. Like, they really can't sue about this stuff. The Latin American citizens kind of have a standing problem. But I shall then, because in some instances, I shall deny their requests as to sections 2B, 7A, and 7B. And so you'd have to go through and figure out what those are specifically. Maybe she'll detail those for us. But it looks like 2A will be upheld, right? So 2A sounds valid. Oh, here she does it. She explained it. 2B orders the database to be created, and 7A and 7B are denied. So 7A saying the Attorney General can continue to enforce the 2 statutes against the states, denying that. And 5th, 7B orders the election assistance to withhold federal grants. So some of those things will survive. This is what it sounds like. You can continue to do that. And it sounds like the pattern here is, right, it's too much of an encroachment. You can't direct them to do these things. Orders the Attorney General to enforce 2 statutes, saying you can't order them to not enforce the statutes, right? So we'll carry on. She says, on the present record, challenges to those provisions are premature, so I can't stop them from doing those things yet, or properly presented by these plaintiffs but by the states themselves. And in fact, many states are already bringing those challenges elsewhere. She's saying, so they're suing here, they're suing here. So you're not the right person, they're the right person. But their arguments, Trump's arguments, falter with respect to their challenges to 2A and 2D. So those will survive. And 2A, of course, was the citizenship. So they're going to strike the citizenship. And 2D is the assessment, right? So in other words, having documentary proof provided and then assessing that proof, both of those things are struck and stayed. So it's the citizenship component of the executive order. Now, on the merits, they say the Latin American citizens are going to substantially prevail. They're going to win because our Constitution entrusts Congress and the states, not the president, with the ultimate authority to regulate federal elections. Okay. But he also has to enforce the law. So I guess we're going to quibble over this word. What is the regulation versus enforcement of the actual laws that are already in the books, which already say it's not lawful for illegals to vote? Consistent with the allocation of that power, Congress is currently debating legislation that would affect many of the changes that Trump is purporting to change. So since Congress is considering it, he can't do anything now. And no statutory delegation of authority permits this by executive order. Saying, and here's what they show. The Latin American citizens who are now in charge of American elections have also shown that implementation of these sections would cause them irreparable harm if they have to prove they're citizens. And it would not be in the public interest for us to verify that or have a database or make these assessments. Saying as a result, they're entitled to an injunction. Here's why, the judge says. And going to detail this on 119 pages, lots of wine. Says, all right, our Constitution, she's going to give us a bunch of background. Let's fast forward through this. Constitution vests control over federal elections to the states. And we spent a lot of time on this, by the way, back in 2020, when we were asking ourselves why judges were usurping the powers from the legislatures and why, if the states, and by states they mean the legislatures, controlled the actual elections, why the judges were overriding the states and saying, oh no, COVID emergency, we're going to change the rules. You don't need to do these things in order to cast your ballot, or you can cast them days late, or you can cast them in these drop-off locations because we don't want you to die from COVID because it's an emergency. So we can change everything we want. Yeah. Subject to some oversight by Congress. Now, again, it's not about the regulation per se. It's about the execution and enforcement of the existing law. So she's going to give us some background. Great stuff. Thanks for the history lesson, Judge. We know how the elections work. We've got voter qualifications, presidential elections. States determine voter eligibility requirements, as is their discretion to do so. Now, the Constitution also grants states broad regulatory authority over the conduct. So we start with the state's power. But this grant is the default. The election clause, lots of rules here. She goes through the framers. It's 120 pages, so we'll go fast. National Voter Registration Act, lots of details that don't necessarily apply to this case, but just laying out what the background is before we get to this particular case and to see what these Latin American citizens are complaining about. So as we fast forward, here we go. Now we get to the facts and proceedings. Okay, so that's a regurgitation of all the history and all the law. 15 pages later, here's what happened here. On March 25th, Trump signed the executive order, and that directs a variety of federal officials to take actions that the Trump says will proffer and helps to ensure federal elections are honest and worthy of trust. We just reviewed the order. Among other things, prompt action within 30 days to require people registering to vote to submit proof of citizenship, not complicated. Directs the head of agencies to do this, including DOJ. Directs the Attorney General to enforce the law. Directs another agency to condition funding on compliance with these requirements. Now, soon after the executive order, 3 groups of Democrats all came and filed lawsuit. They went nuts, right? They just come crashing in like clown cars. 2 of the groups of plaintiffs in the actions of nonpartisan, not-for-profit organizations sued. The first group to file charges was the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC. And does that mean, I like, would a hyphen make that Latin American? So it would be like American, or does that non-hyphen grammar, police out there, please help. Does that change? Are these Latin American citizens, or are these American citizens who are also Latin? I don't know. Says here, the second group includes League of Women Voters, who I think we saw in that Marvel movie that one time that came out from Disney. Wow, lots of superheroes. League of Women Voters of the United States, League of Women Voters of Arizona. Oh gosh, they're here. The Hispanic Federation, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, the Asian Pacific American Advocates. They're here. Asian and Pacific Islander American Vote, all collectively called the League Plaintiffs. They got their Democrat pronoun rings together, connected them, and then like Captain Planet or whatever, they all combined, and then Captain Karl Marx emerged. In this memo, the court refers to these two groups collectively. Look at this garbage. I'm going to call them nonpartisan plaintiffs. What a joke. That shows you the whole game right there. That one decision from this judge just shatters the whole facade, doesn't it? We just listen to them. The League of Women Voters, the Hispanic Federation. How do they vote? Nonpartisan. So you to call them the nonpartisan plaintiffs. Just call them plaintiffs. What do you have to shove that qualifier in there for, Judge? Oh my gosh. Why don't you just call them very genuine, kind and caring, nonpartisan, definitely honest and trustworthy plaintiffs full of integrity, and just refer to them that way every time throughout this? What a joke. The other groups, what are you going to call the other groups? Idiot, moron, loser, tyranny, enhancers of America? Several national organizations, like these other people, who are also, oh, I see what she's going to do. So she's going to categorize, so they're nonpartisan because they're in this bucket. Okay, so maybe I was a little hard on her, but they're clearly partisan. So you could say, how about instead of nonpartisan, because she's going to call these, I guess, the partisan. Are you going to call them partisan? No, she's going to call them Democratic Party. So the others, who are the clear partisans, this is great, are going to be the DNC, the Democratic governors, the DSCC, the DCCC, the other individuals associated with Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries. Okay, got it. So as long as we qualify them as the partisans, the Democratic Party, we'll call all these other people who are clearly partisans, nonpartisans. Got it. It's like such a false equivalency. Many of the nonpartisan plaintiffs are membership organizations. So then she gets to regurgitate that this entire time. Nonpartisan plaintiffs, nonpartisan plaintiffs. How about you just say like unaffiliated, right? You could just say they're unaffiliated with the Democratic Party. Like how many other words could you put in there to come up with just another explanation for who they are? Or how about you call them the NGO plaintiffs or the nonprofit plaintiffs, right? If they're all nonprofits, how do you call them nonprofit plaintiffs? Why not nonpartisan? Pick a different label. They're not nonpartisan. They pick labels that don't match. We can see the partisanship in these groups dangling in between their legs. Everybody knows it. We can all see it. You can't hide it. Call yourselves whatever you want. You're clearly partisan. Okay, pick a different label. We can see it. Stop trying to confuse us. Our membership organizations with members and supporters throughout the nations, including at least one organization, the League of Women Voters. Yeah. They organized in every state and the District of Columbia. And I wonder who they vote for. Any idea whose rallies they show up for? Each of the nonpartisan plaintiffs, which is filled with partisanship, asserts an interest in helping citizens register to vote in federal elections. Isn't that nice? Several of the nonpartisan plaintiffs, we'll just call them the partisan plaintiffs, assert specific interest in helping eligible citizens register to vote. Several of the partisans also offer online voter registration tools for all their illegal aliens. And finally, online, right? Just hop online. Yeah. If you have to check their forms against the federal database, that's not going to be good for business. So finally, some of the nonpartisan plaintiffs, aka the partisan plaintiffs, assert that their individual members have legally protected interest in using the federal form, which doesn't validate citizenship, right? The states are supposed to validate the citizenship, check it against the motor vehicle records, and then block them. But they just say, oh, we'll just get a federal form and just vote in the federal elections and take it from there. Now, some of the Democratic Party plaintiffs are also very active in every state. Each of the Democratic Party's plaintiffs asserts a fair, lawful competition for elective office. We got Hakeem and Chuck Schumer, Democratic Party plaintiffs. I'm surprised she didn't call them nonpartisan too. And they collectively represent millions of voters throughout the entire country. They say, if you do these checks, Millions will be unable to register to vote or would be dissuaded from registering if we have to prove citizenship, which is fine. If you don't want to prove your citizenship, that's fine. Don't vote. But you got to do it. If you're going to be dissuaded, well, I don't know what to tell you about that. I mean, get swayed, right? You got to provide it for everything in life. So get swayed for it. Says on April 1st, the clerk of the court randomly assigned this case to me. Yeah, right. Okay. We all know how that works in DC. They just assign the case to like the biggest Democratic hack who's up that night. It's like an algorithm. The nonpartisan plaintiff cases were later assigned to this court. So a bunch of cases went out. They consolidated a bunch of cases, and here we are. So shortly thereafter, the partisans requested the court set an expedited briefing standard. We've done that now. The legal standard, lots of stuff there, are not that much actually going to be laid out, but she gave us a lot of the rules at the outset of the filing, and then she'll give us some analysis. So she's going to say the president's power is limited, Article 2 Constitution. In practice, neat categorization of how this works is elusive. And presidents often invoke things imprecisely. And so the interplay is very complicated. Going to go through the cause of action, how the DC courts all handle this. Let's look at standing. Defendants have invoked both of these doctrines here. Okay, there's no standing, and this case is not ripe. There's no problem. They're here saying that our constituents, I guess, who are illegal, are going to be harmed. They say, well, it hasn't happened yet, so you got to show us some actual harm. Otherwise, it's just too speculative. Your case is not right. Judge says in a case like this one involving pre-enforcement challenge to executive action, ripeness is subsumed into the Article 3 requirement, which is standing. And so ripeness is not a concern. Ketanji Brown, there's a savings clause, lots of analysis on this, which is very technical. And then we get to standing. But these presumptions resolve factual questions downstream. The presumption of regularity does not require a court to assume the president's exercise of power is lawful, only attaches after, right? This is something we've been talking about. Presumption of regularity was afforded to the Biden administration in every single lawsuit that was filed against them, right? If you sued for COVID or something like that, they just laughed at you. Get out. You're fired, peasant. You're not essential anyways. Get out of here. Take it or die. We don't care, right? That's how they treated all of us. And if you sued or challenged it or anything, they just get out. You can't do that. But now they challenge everything. There is no presumption of regularity. In fact, they even try to distinguish it. So they also articulate standing. They say we got limited jurisdiction. You got to actually have jurisdiction to hear a case. A party must have standing for cases to move forward. There's several ways to get that: individual, associational, organizational standing. In other decisions, here's what they said. The Supreme Court recently emphasized more. Prior precedent says the following. In some, you can't spend your way into standing, and mere advocacy is not enough, but organizations can have standing to challenge practices that interfere with their core activities, and that's what these do. So the Latin American voters, so-called, are going to be harmed, and so they're going to find some layer of standing. Now, then we turn to these 5 claims, saying they're challenging the citizenship component. Saying, for the reasons detailed below, the court concludes that both the partisans and the Democrats are going to win. They're going to suffer irreparable harm if we have to make them prove their citizenship. Say they argue that they're going to lose. Trump says, no, they're going to lose. They don't have standing. It's not right. And there's no merits here. They say the section of the order says we're allowed to actually take appropriate action. The rules say it. Section 2A says we can take appropriate action. One of those things is checking citizenship. The law is HAVA, an NVRA. And we can process this. The ordinary course takes time to develop this. And so at the moment, any of their concerns about these so-called harms are speculative. They're not even real. So develop the record showing how they're harmed, in what way, and then we can proceed further. But the judge says, no, this is not going to succeed. It misconceives what is actually happening here. The judge says, no, it's not telling what's going to happen. You can't say something may never occur. It's in the order. You have to do it. So it's going to happen. And so since we know it's going to happen, we can impact it now. It can't be squared with the plain text of the order. You're required to do this. It says shall take, right? So she's going to rub this in their face. What you can't, you're going to say it's speculative, like you have to do it. It's coming right around the corner. The order says, are you not going to follow the president's order? So if you say that it's too speculative, it's not, those are different because those may have happened, but this is not. This is going to happen because it came down in an order. And it's not merely an authorization to change the federal form. There's much more happening here. It's saying under these circumstances, if requiring documentary proof on the federal form would inflict an injury, that injury is imminent because it's going to happen soon. So you can't call it premature. It's going to happen. Trump put it in the order, and other cases that you're trying to distinguish this case from are just not relevant. Here, this section contains no feasibility or practicality. Like, it's not like a qualifier. It didn't say only do this if this is okay. It's you're doing it. There's no savings clause. So since it's mandatory, there is no lawful outcome that can possibly result for this because the president lacks any authority to dictate changes to federal forms, is what the people who are suing say. He can't change it. So no matter what this change was, it's unlawful. Now, it's no answer to that challenge to say that the saving clause requires him to follow the law of the order. And the DC Circuit has helped clarify this, but there is also no presumption of regularity for Trump. And the timing arguments also run aground. And so unfortunately, 3 days before this, they say they began taking action. The EAC actually started moving forward this. They sent a letter on letterhead saying, we're going to start implementing this. Now, at the hearing, the plaintiff's motions on the Latin American lawsuit bringers, the defendant's counsel made an effort to explain away the letter, saying, no, we're not actually implementing this because there was a TRO in place. But what you're doing here, the proposed language and all of that, is not in alignment. So reversing course on the position doesn't mean that the order doesn't say what it says. So the question is ripe for review. Okay, all that to say, the question is ripe for review. So it's ready, even though it hasn't happened yet. The change hasn't been implemented. We can hear it. Now, first, the nonpartisan plaintiffs, who are filled with partisans, have shown that they've got standing because they're going to be harmed. The burden of having them prove citizenship would do far more than simply be a setback to their abstract social interests. They say, if we have to prove citizenship, the Latin American citizens, they say, it's going to be a big problem for us. It's going to go to our core business activities, which is registering eligible voters. So they say, if we have to prove citizenship, that would render obsolete several of the online tools because they'd have to ask now, we got to go update the forms that the partisan plaintiffs have developed and that they routinely use. We have to replace these tools. We got to update our tools to make sure that they're citizens. So you can't change your rules to secure an election because the people who are exploiting the rules to rig your election need those tools to stay the same. Similarly, adding such a requirement would force the partisan plaintiffs to update educational information that they provide to prospective voters saying, hey, you got to actually be a citizen now. Oh, they don't want to update that. Much of that has been translated into multiple languages. Oh, that's okay. They got AI. It takes like 2 seconds now. A documentary proof of citizenship requirement would also require the partisans to invest additional resources in training their staff and volunteers to handle the new requirement of confirming that they're actually citizens. Shocking, I know. Saying, we got to tell them how to look at passports and other documents, what's acceptable, what's not. And it would also make existing voter registration efforts less effective. Saying, if we hold voter drives at churches or grocery stores or in other places, they're going to be less effective if we have to prove citizenship because many people don't carry the documents with them as they go on their daily routines. This loss of effectiveness would interfere with their mission. And that mission is to register, I guess, illegals. For all these reasons, the nonpartisans have shown a substantial likelihood that they have standing and they're going to win because they need the tools wide open so they can register as many people as they want because they're nonpartisan and all they care about is making people's voices heard in America. Yeah. Now, second, they've also shown associational standing. They want to make sure their people's votes are counted. At the hearing, they produced They could produce, wow, incredible. Look at this. At the hearing, this judge like lapped this up. She's like, you're kidding. You have somebody who will testify to this? Yes, Your Honor, I swear. The partisan plaintiffs proffered that they could, if required, Your Honor, we could do this. We could get you a pseudo-anonymous declaration from a member of Arizona Students Association. Ugh, embarrassing. Showing that the declarant is eligible to vote, but would have difficulty complying with the documentary proof of citizenship requirements. So we have some stupid ASU student who's pseudo-anonymous who can't figure it out. Your Honor, I'm eligible to vote, but I don't have any documentation for whatever reason. Well, go get some. Nonpartisan plaintiffs, do you have a driver's license in Arizona? Nonpartisan plaintiffs further proffered that there are many other similarly situated members in their organization. So hard to get some documentation. So everybody doesn't need to provide any documentation at all. Because they, in these consolidated cases, they say don't need to know the identity of a particular member. The court says the partisan plaintiffs' declarations from their leaders and on the record proffer show that they're going to be injured. There could be a substantial likelihood of injury there. And so since they have that, they've got standing, and that's here we are. Now, the Democratic Party also suing right out the wazoo here, and going to be much the same. This would impose on them a setback to their abstract, more than a setback to their abstract social issues. It's going to cause concrete harm on them. It's incredible they admit it. It's like, we're going to be obliterated, man. We're never going to win another election again. Yeah, we know it's going to cause harm to you guys. It's nice to see you put it in writing. Therefore, the implementation of citizenship would inflict a concrete harm. Just to be clear, they wrote that. The judge found this. According to the Democrats, if you implement a rule that requires checking of citizenship before voting, it's going to inflict a concrete harm on the DNC, Democrats, the Governors Association, the Senate Committee, and the Congressional Committee. That's a judicial finding. Proof of citizenship will harm them. Therefore, see, that's the conclusion. Yep. We know, because you're exploiting it. That's the point. Thanks for admitting it. Now, second, they've also shown substantial likelihood. They count among many members across the country who are registered as Democrats and have maybe some, some work they can do around that issue on themselves. Says they're going to have difficulty for providing proof because they're Democrats and they have difficulty with most things. Those members interested in registering to vote and voting is plainly germane to their mission. Democrats want to help Democrats register and vote. They don't care if they're illegals or not. And so the DNC has standing to bring this lawsuit. They've got another basis for this too. They say that there's alternative competing things, and some people might have certain advantages if they can work the system, and others, these competitive standing arguments are valid for, instead their standing rests properly on their right to compete under lawful rules. Okay, so standing's fine. Now, all plaintiffs, they've all got standing. Great, got it. Judge is doing everything she can to make sure this moves forward, saying here, because each of the injuries flows from the predictable effect that the new voter registration for citizenship will require, those injuries satisfy the traceability requirement. We can connect it back to Trump and his EO. And so in sum, they've shown there's going to be injuries here, and we could fix this. So they've carried their burden on the citizenship challenge. Going back through the Constitution to get onto the merits of this, a lot more history here, saying here, Trump is at its lowest ebb of power. Okay, we talk about this as the climax, the apex. In this case, she says it's at his lowest because it's contrary to the will of Congress. They don't want this. It reflects a careful allocation of power, and you're reading too much into it. You can't just insert proof of citizenship in here. She says, I don't think it belongs there. It's not appropriate for them to give you power or for you to interpret it that way. No statute grants the president authority to add proof of citizenship to the form, and so he can't do that. The president lacks the power. He's got no constitutional authority to do this, and because Trump says it is lawful, but this argument doesn't respond to the problems that we've identified, and there's a bunch more to it. So you get the gist of it. We'll fast forward through and see what the judge is ultimately ordering. She's going to go through the rest of the arguments for the rest of the complaint that was ultimately filed in the rest of those sections, but we care about ultimately the citizenship component. So this is what the rest of it looks like. She goes on, had a couple more glasses of wine, just kept going. But here, saying other sections we'll deal with. In conclusion, as we get to the final pages of this document, she wraps it up, says, all right. Now, multiple courts have recently declined to require plaintiffs to post bond. And we were asking about this. They've got broad discretion for an injunction bond and says, we're going to deny the request to require a bond. Wow, amazing. So no injunction bond either. Says, we've got broad discretion to do this. Other courts are not requiring a bond. And Trump has not shown that they're going to suffer any material harm or monetary loss from this. And so if you require a bond against an unlawful executive action, that would risk deterring other litigants. If I make them post money, then other people may not sue. So what we're going to do is therefore decline any bond. And here is the final order from this judge saying, for the reasons explained, the United Latin American citizens, who I think just may be citizens of Latin America, I don't know, some countries down there, I don't know. The League of Women Voters, who joined together with their power rings from the League of Women Voters of US, League of Power Women Voters of Arizona, the Hispanic Federation, the Asian folks, and the rest of them, all granted their preliminary injunction on behalf of the Democrats and the partisans. So saying Section 2A, which is the citizenship portion of this, is enjoined. Democrats win on another one, which is 2D, which is assessing the citizenship. Okay, so requiring proof and assessing citizenship, both of those actions are prohibited. Now, as to the other components, denied for the reason, which the main one that we care about was the one that she ruled against, saying nothing in this order says you can continue to take lawful action that's not based on that executive order or any other action dictated by the president. So if there's other provisions of law, this is the same pattern we're seeing, right? They're just attacking that executive order. And if he's got other provisions, he can use those to implement these changes administratively. But that came out. Colleen Collar-Cottley, who is transparently on the face of things, quite partisan, just by virtue of the fact that she calls other partisans nonpartisan. Thanks, Judge, for confirming that. So we'll keep our eye on this one. For the day, the Elias Law Group celebrates another district level judge taking over the executive branch by plaintiffs who are Latin American citizens, whatever that means, and League of Women Voters. So they're in charge running the country until Trump appeals, until the Supreme Court wants to step in and stop this. It will continue. We'll be here to continue to cover it. Thanks for joining and subscribing as we do. All right, now we're not done yet. We're changing gears and going over to the Supreme Court of the United States and jumping in on this one. At the Supreme Court of the United States, we've got a case about a ban on the trans in the military. You may have remembered this one, brought by Emily Schilling. First names in this case, in these cases, are always debatable, so use caution. But United States of America versus Emily Schilling, and actually it was, I think, Emily Schilling versus the United States of America and et al. And many other plaintiffs who filed this lawsuit saying, you can't kick us out of the military or deny us admittance to the military. And so you can see this is the Trump administration, D. John Sauer, who is submitting this to the Supreme Court, saying this is an application for a stay of the injunction that was issued in Washington State, not D.C., in the Western District over there, right? So Hegseth came in, entered the military, said, okay, no trans in the military, we're done with that. And referencing back an old Mattis, I think, policy that was already allowed and just reverting things back to that. And then everyone sued. You can't do this. There's already due process rights and you can't deport them out of the military. So they got an order that said that they were victorious. Now Trump is appealing this to reverse that. And here is what it says. They submitted this. All right, Supreme Court of the United States. Are you there? Is anybody home? Hello, McFly, Roberts, wake up. Saying, we're here again. We are the entire U.S. government, for crying out loud. Army, Navy, Air Force, SecDef, President, all here. Now, the respondents are these people: Commander Emily Schilling, Blake Dreeman, Garrett, Catherine Schmid, Jane Doe, Vidal, Matthew, Sierra, and the Gender Justice League. Wow, they just love their leagues, don't they? So, all right, we got those people who are suing. Now, here's what we got. All right, Supreme Court, listen up. We are here knocking on your door, respectfully filing this application for a stay of the lower court order issued by the lower level district judge as this appeal is pending. Now, in this case, the lower level court issued a universal injunction for the whole country, usurping the executive branch's authority to determine who may serve in the nation's armed forces, despite this court, you, Supreme Court, previously staying injunctions against a materially indistinguishable policy. So this judge is stopping us via an injunction, but you, Supreme Court, have stopped other judges who've done that in the past. So stop them now. In February 2025, the Department of Defense, via Pete Hegseth and the team at Trump Co., adopted its current policy, which generally disqualifies from military service individuals who have gender dysphoria or have undergone medical interventions for gender dysphoria. If you've gotten treatment for this or have identified that I have this condition, you are disqualified. Just like if you've got any other condition, right? If you've got like a bum knee or bum hip, bad back, or some other, psychological problem or whatever, we'd love to have you come join us, but you are disqualified because we have certain medical requirements, like any military should. Now, the policy was based in part on the findings by a panel of experts convened during the first Trump administration, which found that service by individuals with gender dysphoria was contrary to, quote, military effectiveness and lethality. Respondents, Amelia, whatever their names were, changed the department and challenged the department's policy on equal protection or other grounds, saying you're discriminating against us. Despite this court's admonition, the Supreme Court, that professional military judgments about the composition of the armed forces should be given great deference, the district court in Washington issued a universal injunction against the policy. You guys said before, they owe us deference. This is a military operation. She didn't care. Why would she? Now, in so doing, the lower level court ordered the government to maintain a different policy that the department has deemed incompatible with the high mental and physical standards necessary for military service. Now, as noted, this case does not plow new ground, okay? It's a repeat. In 2018, years ago, then Secretary of Defense James Mattis adopted a policy, you may remember this, before Transtopia Looneyville took over the whole world. It was materially indistinguishable from the one at issue here. Now, that generally disqualified individuals with gender dysphoria from military service back then. Certain plaintiffs challenged Mattis's policy on equal protection grounds. They said, and then on other grounds, and guess what? The district courts enjoined the policy on a universal basis, saying, do you remember this? They sued, saying, this is discrimination. And they stopped us last time. They said, you can't do that. Don't ban the trans, said all the district court judges. It was like flashback, right? But then this court stayed those injunctions. This court undid all of that madness. And it should do the same here. It's like flashback. You guys did this, right? And they're referencing the Supreme Court cases. You see this one from 2019, this one from 2019. Trump versus Karnosky, Trump versus Stockman or woman. We're there suing. And they should do the same thing here. The Supreme Court said you can't get involved in that. You got to defer to the executive branch. Now, because of the 2025 policy, just like the Mattis policy, it turns on a medical condition, which is called gender dysphoria, and the related medical interventions. The Constitution demands, if that's the issue, if it's medical and it's related to the military, it demands only rational basis review, okay? Especially in the military context, meaning we don't have to give it all this strict scrutiny. If the government has a rational basis for doing this, they can do it because it's not infringing on any constitutionally protected right, like your identity, something related to that, like your gender, in other words, or your sex ID, or however they want to phrase it. It's not related to that. It's related, okay, identify however you want. But if you got to, go get treatment for this and start lopping things off and talking addictomy, chopodicophomy, all the things, and then go get treatment, and then we have to give you therapy and talk to all this stuff. That's a medical condition, and gender dysphoria is, according to these experts, a medical condition. Now, the 2025, here you go, it says it. In 2025, like the Mattis policy, it readily satisfies that review. It is in italics, undisputed, that gender dysphoria is a medical condition associated with the clinically significant distress and impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning, okay? So if you have it, we know, yeah, it is awkward, for sure. And in 2025, as in the Mattis policy before it, the department rationally determined that service by individuals with gender dysphoria would undermine military effectiveness and lethality. Now, consistent with similar longstanding determinations for a wide range of other medical conditions like asthma and hypertension, we can regulate that in the military. Now, the district court and their injunction from Washington cannot be squared with the substantial deference that the department's professional military judgments are owed. This judge in Washington doesn't get to tell the military that it's okay to have a certain class of people that they've already made a decision on their own are not appropriate. Nor can the court's injunction be squared with this court's decision to stay the injunction against the Mattis policy. In staying those injunctions before, the last time we did this court necessarily determined that the government was going to win in defending the Mattis policy. But the lower level court failed to identify any relevant difference in this policy than that policy. Now, although the court noted that the new policy narrows the circumstances, actually, in which an otherwise disqualified person may nevertheless serve, the policy merely reflects a more cautious approach to the risks that are associated with gender dysphoria and the related medical interventions. Nothing in the Constitution prohibits the department, this is Trump writing to SCOTUS, from making that modest change, which does not alter the conclusion that rational basis review applies and is satisfied. Now, and in suggesting that experience under the policies of the last administration shows that service by individuals with gender dysphoria does not present meaningful risks, the court improperly second-guessed the military's own assessment, right? And so the trans judges, man, they go wild. Like there was that other judge in, what was her name? I think she's identifies as lesbian or something, in Southern District in New York. What was her name? Anna C. Reyes. Yeah. She went wild. You can't prove that these people are any different than, went nuts. We read through it. You're like, gosh, she's crazy. So same thing, I think, probably happened in Washington, where she went through and, they served in Trump's first military in these capacities and it wasn't a problem with her. And they said, well, you don't get to second guess our judgments. We're back here again. The trans situation's totally different than last time. And we're making new adjustments. So the Ninth Circuit denial of the stay, writes Trump, cannot be reconciled with this court's decision to stay the injunctions against the prior policy. Like if we won last time, we have to win now. In a one-page order, the Ninth Circuit asserted the government had not shown it would suffer irreparable harm, right? So you can keep the trans in the military. You'll be fine. Just relax. Everyone's fine with it. But in staying the injunctions against the Mattis policy, you, Supreme Court, determined those injunctions would cause harm. Same is true here. Like the injunctions last time, this also harms us. We are trying to build a strong military. And so if you don't stay this from Washington, this court's injunction will remain in place for a lot longer period than is necessary. Longer than we've decided in our professional judgment. It would be contrary to military readiness and before. And so at minimum, Supreme Court, D. John Sauer sent this in today saying you should stay this injunction and their universal scope right now. If these 8 dudes or whatever, they want to file a lawsuit here, then we'll talk about them. But you don't get to have a universal injunction for everybody. If the other trans people want to sue, they can sue. But as it stands right now, don't make it universal. Now, here's the reason why. They tell us the military policies explain the following. To assemble a military of qualified and effective able-bodied persons, the DoD has a set of demanding standards for military service. Hundreds of medical conditions are disqualifying unless you have a waiver. Here's a list: cataracts, asthma, high blood pressure, diabetes, severe headaches, for crying out loud, other common mental conditions. Also other things: mental, behavioral, learning disorders, bipolar, spectrum disorders, autism, eating disorders, suicidality, obsessive compulsive anxiety, depressive disorders, many other things. You see the list. A lot of people have them. In fact, 71% of the country are ineligible to join. So in general, the DoD has aligned the mental disorders it has deemed disqualifying in the DSM. The 1980 edition of the DSM, oh, yeah, they had to change all this. Like, wow, this is getting really popular now. And for our political party, we're just going to try to continue to evaporate all meaning in society and destroy the culture of the country. But what we'll do is just modify this. But back in 1980, if you recall, the DSM recognized transsexualism as a disorder whose essential features were a persistent sense of discomfort and inappropriate about one's sex anatomically, and a persistent wish to be rid of one's genitals, that's a chopadichotomy, and to live as a member of the opposite sex. When the DSM was updated in 1994, the same thing was subsumed with the term gender identity disorder, because it got a little bit more progressive back then. That's nice. Saying consistent with the DSM, the military's accession standards had for decades treated a history of that as disqualifying. For decades. They like to say it's been this way for decades. Likewise, the military retention standards, the standards that govern retention of and separation of persons, has historically treated that as a permissible basis for discharge. Again, that was consistent with the demands of the military, which was identifying mental disorders that for decades had been recognized as permissible grounds as a disorder. Now, in 2013, when the APA established the 5th edition of the DSM, known as the DSM-5, it replaced the term gender identity disorder with gender dysphoria. Then the DSM-5 was marked as, it defines gender dysphoria as marked incongruence between one's experience or expressed gender and assigned gender, or at least 6 months duration, that is manifested in various ways associated with clinically significant distress, impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. Yeah. Now, according to this, the DSM-5, some adults with gender dysphoria may desire cross-sex hormone interventions or a reassignment surgery. It further observes that adults with gender dysphoria are at increased risk for suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, and suicides, and may have coexisting mental health problems, most with common anxiety and other depressive disorders. Now, under the DSM-5, gender dysphoria and trans are distinct terms. Whereas trans refers to a broad spectrum of individuals who persistently identify, dysphoria refers to distress associated with that. Emphasizes not all individuals will experience distress with dysphoria, which is so it's different, right? This is an identity versus a disorder. In 2016, then, okay, got that out of the way. In 2016, and it's very complicated, but in 2016, the then Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter, 2016, ordered the military to adopt a new standard, a session standard, July 17. Under those new standards, a history of trans would no longer be disqualifying at that time. But Secretary Carter recognized the needs for medical standards. Okay, so shifted it from trans to medical to ensure that those entering service are free of medical conditions or physical defects. Carter therefore ordered anew that a history of dysphoria, a history of transition, or reassignment are disqualifying, certain exceptions. Saying, unless somebody can be certified as being stable without clinically significant distress for 18 months, no admission. Carter also ordered the military to adopt new retention standards. Under the new standards for retention, service members who were diagnosed with dysphoria were permitted to undergo transition and to serve in their gender that they transitioned into. But service members who did not meet that remain subject to the same standards of their original sex. Now, thus, absent a diagnosis of the clinically significant distress or any of the things, bathrooms and more, they still had to meet the same standards. Now, in June, before the Carter accession standards were set to take effect, Mattis came out. After consultation with secretaries and chiefs of staff, they said it was necessary to defer those standards until the military could evaluate the effect on readiness. Mattis established a panel of experts, so those maybe did not go into effect, to conduct an independent multidisciplinary review of the data. The panel consisted of senior uniformed people. They exercised a professional judgment. So then, Feb 2018, rewind the clock, Mattis sent a memo to Trump proposing a new policy consistent with their findings. Recognizing that the new policy reflected his independent judgment, Trump said, implement it. Under the Mattis policy, individuals who, quote, were diagnosed with or had a history of dysphoria were generally disqualified, except under limited circumstances. The standards thus treated a history of dysphoria as disqualifying unless 36 months of stability. Immediately preceding this, Mattis and the retention standards said a diagnosis of dysphoria was grounds for discharge and more. Now, several district courts sued, entered injunctions immediately. The trans went wild. They sued and injunctions were issued. You can't do this. Look at all these cases. Judges said, that's discrimination. All claiming equal protection, due process, First Amendment, and more. Now, while the government requests were pending, the D.C. Circuit vacated the injunction in one of the cases and more. And here we see, soon after, this court, the Supreme Court, granted stays of the injunction in the other two cases. So it sounds like the order then was going into effect. So then the memo, the Mattis memo, was in effect. In 2021, Biden came in. He says, oh, no. Bring them back. Bring them back in. Come on in. Boys, girls, men, women, they, thems, these, zers, whatever. Come on in. Memorandum permitting the implementation of the Mattis policy got revoked. Then Lloyd Austin put on a couple face masks and disappeared for a month, and then issued new accession standards. Those standards still treated dysphoria and gender-affirming surgery as disqualifying under certain circumstances, right? He's actually like, for example, Austin, his standard said, if you've got a history of gender dysphoria, it was disqualifying if you were symptomatic within the last 18 months in association with comorbid mental health disorders. In other words, there were he kept some of the things. Soon after taking office, then, Trump issued another executive order saying, no, we're back to lethality, all right? No more, helicopter parties or whatever they're doing there in the Saharas. Finding that the policy is going to be inconsistent with medical and surgical advice, Trump updated this. On Feb 26, DOD issued a new policy, boom, saying, no, we've done a review, and our recommendations are going to go back to the Mattis. We found that nearly 40% of service members with gender dysphoria in an observed cohort were non-deployable over a 24-month period. You're kidding. A 2025 medical literature review conducted by the Office of Health reported that the suicide attempt rate is estimated to be 13 times higher among transgender individuals than among their regularly gendered counterparts. The strength of evidence on trans mental health and gender-affirming care is low to moderate, and a review of the cost of data shows, 52 million. Yeah, 52 million bucks to treat gender dysphoria in the military. Incredible. So based on its review, the DOD said, while service members can volunteer, the cost associated with their health care is way too much of a risk in their diagnosis, limits their deployability, makes them incompatible with the rigorous standards. We need a ready deployable force, okay? So that they don't fit. Now, under the 2025 policy, as under Mattis, individuals who have current or diagnosed of this are presumptively disqualified. Same as the DSM-5. The 2025 policy likewise treats a history of hormone therapy or assignment or reconstruction, addictomy or the other one, as treatment as disqualifying. Now, under the 2025 policy, however, an individual with a disqualifying history may be considered for retention on a case-by-case basis. Okay, 36 months more. So all of that happened. Now, with that procedural history, the respondents, the people who were suing, are 7 trans-identifying individuals. This is back to Trump now saying, Supreme Court, listen, you got all that. We already won this last time. They're currently serving in the military, one trans identifying individual who wants to join the military, and an advocacy organization of the League, saying the ban is a ban on the trans. They say it's a violation of equal protection and more. So then in March, the district court granted their motion. We got a universal injunction saying they're going to win, saying because it's scrutiny based on sex and status, it's intermediate scrutiny. And you're not going to beat that. There's no good reason to kick him out under that level of scrutiny. So Trump says, all right, Supreme Court, let's be real about this. Now, under the rules, you may act on this if we're going to win. Treat it as an injunction, consider it as a final order, and hear the case. We deserve a stay here. You, Supreme Court, have already previously stayed other policies that blocked the first policy the first time we did this. You granted those stays. You said we were going to win. We're back. The new policy does not discriminate against any suspect class at all. Instead, like Carter, Mattis, and Austin, the policy is based on a medical condition called gender dysphoria and the medical conditions associated with that. This is a military context, so it's rational basis. And we have these different levels of scrutiny in constitutional analysis. The lowest, simplest standard is rational basis. It's this idea that if the government wants to do something, they can do something without a lot of scrutiny. You're not going to challenge them on it, provided that they're not infringing on some core constitutional right of yours. Now, if they are going to infringe on that, if you do the analysis and they say, oh, what that government did, that law, that action, that executive order, if it's infringing on something like a constitutionally protected right, then it's not rational basis. We say, oh, we got to elevate that to intermediate scrutiny or strict scrutiny, which means the government has to meet a much higher justification for doing the thing that they're doing. It just doesn't, it's not rationally related to their objective. It now needs to be necessary and the least necessary means to attain their goal for strict scrutiny. I think that's the standard if we're remembering that right from con law. But that is where we're at. So they're saying, the plaintiffs are saying it's got to be a higher standard because it's impacting our sex. They're saying, no, it's not. It's medical. The 2025 policy is rational basis review only. It's a medical condition. The policy presumptively disqualifies people with gender dysphoria, just like all of the other things. It turns on a medical condition. There's nothing suspect about those classifications. While it's true that some of them may seek hormone treatment and other surgeries, these are the same policies that were in Carter's policies, Mattis's policies, and even Lloyd Austin's policies. Austin's standards, even which the district court injunction requires to keep in place, it even says, right, even the prior policy says it's disqualifying. Now, because the new policy, like the priors before it, draws classifications based on medical conditions, it's rational. That would be true even in the civilian context, but it's even more true in the military context. You got to defer to us on this one. Long history of deference. And it's the military, so you have to give us the benefit of the doubt, essentially. Now, the district court nevertheless concluded that the policy triggers heightened scrutiny at intermediate level, but none of its rationales are tenable. All of them would equally condemn the Austin policy that we've been ordered to maintain. So if you're mad at our policy and you think it's illegal, then why'd you just tell us to maintain the prior policy, which, according to your reasoning, is also illegal? The district court primarily sought to justify that heightened level on the ground that the policy discriminates based on transgender status, saying it focuses on dysphoria as the clinical problem, not the identity, is actually how it works. It's not the identity. It's about the manifestation of that identity, which is the same policy as before. In fact, quoting the APA experts on gender dysphoria. Now, the district court said, well, gender dysphoria is closely correlated with being transgender, but that correlation doesn't justify equating them as the same. While it's true that only women can become pregnant, it does not follow that every legislative classification concerning pregnancy is a sex-based classification. Wow, that is a risky sight for a case like this, I got to tell you. They're like, here, let me give you an example of how this works, right? They're trying to give you an explanation. Like, only women can become pregnant, but that doesn't mean that every classification on pregnancy is a sex-based classification against women. And like the trans lawyers on this are going, first of all, anybody can be pregnant. Like they're looking at this, only women, they just had a fit. They just like, threw the case through the, that's not true at all. Oh, men can get pregnant too. Anyone can. So it's hilarious that they're putting that site in there. Well done. Saying also, like this is Trump. There's a little bit of a troll there. Like it's great. Says Dobbs versus Jackson. In any event, even if the 2025 policy discriminated based on transgender, heightened scrutiny is still inappropriate because trans people are not a suspect or quasi-suspect class. Now, the district court also sought to justify intermediate scrutiny, saying, oh, well, okay, if it's not trans, then it's discrimination based on sex. But the 2025 policy references sex in only two contexts, neither of which are discriminatory. First, in the 2025 policy, they reference sex, but that's medical interventions. And again, it's medical interventions, not on the individual's identity. So it's not for intermediate scrutiny. It's about the condition. Second, the policy talks about gender dysphoria, which was the exact same policy as the three other people. So they're not challenging sex-based standards. They're challenging the department's decision not to provide a special exemption from those sex-based standards for the people who switch sexes. Failing to provide a preferential exemption for valid sex-based standards for individuals of gender dysphoria is not even arguably sex discrimination at all. In any event, even if you thought it was, intermediate scrutiny would still be inappropriate because you got to owe deference to the military. So it is rational basis, writes Trump. The lower policy or the new policy satisfies the standard applied here. The government has undisputably important interest in military readiness. And like Mattis before it, the policy is rationally related to those goals. The department standards have historically treated a long list of medical conditions. This has been one of them forever. And the new standards are treating them for the same reasons as the old ones. Everything's the same. So 18 months to 36 months, those are just tweaking the standard, but the policy hasn't changed. Those differences are of no constitutional significance. We tweaked it a little bit, doesn't change anything. Same reason, same justification, same outcomes. It poses a risk, whether it's, everyone agrees, it's some risk. Some people say it's more than others, but everyone acknowledges there's a risk. Now, that is why all of those policies include gender dysphoria on the military's list of disqualifications. We narrowed those circumstances to get it even honed in more, but it still is rational basis review. All of the other three have done this, and in where this differs is during the transition. The new standards generally disqualified people rather than allowing them to transition. But the distinctions are immaterial to the Constitution, right? You can make this change regardless. They chose to accommodate. We're not accommodating, but both of the decisions are made in the same vein. So they're going to give us a lot more analysis here. And I wanted to see how long this entire brief was, because it looks like we got 300 pages of this, but I was expecting it to not be. There it is. Okay. So there's the end of it. So yeah, all of that being said, they're going to go through the elements of the injunction. Let's just close it out. We'll see here the balance of the equities favor staying all of that so we can continue to exercise our policy. We're balancing this. There are harms that will come, just like the prior SecDefs have identified, but their loss of employment for these people who are going to be booted from the military, those are not irreparable harms, right? Being fired or having a discharge, like tell that to all the COVID people who got let go and got discharged, fired. In any event, any harm to them is substantially outweighed by the harm to the government by forcing the military to maintain a policy that has people in there that they don't want in there. The balance of the equities tips in favor of stopping this, just as it did before when you stopped the injunctions to stop the Mattis policy. So D. John Sauer says, Supreme Court, the court should stay their injunction entirely or at least stay this, except as to the 8 people who are identified in this lawsuit. So nice there. The rest of this, we got 300 pages of the memo and the rest of the materials that were submitted, all the accessions, all the policy changes. So going up to the Supreme Court now, it would seem like this would be a slam dunk, right? They're like, it's the exact same as the prior case. So Supreme Court should be a no-brainer. Don't even have to write a new order. Just copy and paste the last one, all right? And just get it done quickly so the military can get back to its state of readiness. So that's the trans update. We'll see what the Supreme Court says in response. There'll be replies coming in here from Emily or Emilio or whomever, and we'll be here covering it. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, we got one more update, my friends. Quick Kilmar update, and rather an update on these deportees. So here is the latest. An interesting order in the Kilmar case. We've been following this one for quite some time. Kilmar, wife beater, MS-13 gangbanger, Abrego Garcia is here. And this is the order that came down from Judge Paula Zenas, United States District Judge. And we've seen some interesting filings here that were under seal. Very curious things happening. Here's what the latest is on the docket. You saw on April 23rd, we got a sealed motion that was submitted by the Trump government, Rubio, Marco, and Kristi Noem. Sealed. Can't see what it is. Then we got a sealed response from Kilmar's attorneys. Then we got an actual order, and this is granting a stay. So this says that all of that discovery that Judge Zenas had ordered, demanding answers as to why Kilmar was sent to El Salvador, what the nature of that contract was, and a bunch of other questions, is stayed, stopped, paused. Judge Zenas says the court has reviewed these sealed motions for a stay and the response, and with the agreement of the parties, the court hereby orders that discovery shall be stayed, until April 30th, 2025 at 5 p.m. So what's going on? Who the heck knows? Do they have a plan to move this guy? Are they going to send him to another third country and the lawyers will be happy with that? Or what's the deal? But the fact that anybody's agreeing on anything in this case is pretty shocking. So that happened. Now, we also have an update in the JGG case, the Boasberg case. This was the same case where the judge issued the order for contempt. And then that order of contempt for Trump was supposed to turn the airplanes around when they were in the middle of the air. Didn't do that. And judge went haywire, issued an order holding them in contempt, but giving them time to cure the contempt. Trump appealed that, and the Court of Appeals stayed that. Now, this was about a week ago. You see, the Court of Appeals came back down, very short filing, said Boasberg and the lower level injunction was stayed, saying, let me read this. The purpose of the administrative stay is to give the court sufficient opportunity to consider the motion, but it will be administratively stayed pending further order of the court. Saying we should get some new filings coming in this week and by tomorrow on this matter. And so we'll keep our eye on those document drops. But we also saw that there was another under seal filing here in the AARP case. Okay, so we got the Kilmar case, we got the JGG case, we got the AARP WMM case. And they also filed another document with the Supreme Court. So the ACLU gangbanger lawyers submitted this to SCOTUS. They said, all right, listen, Supreme Court, we write to alert the court that the government revealed new directly relevant information today in another declaration which they submitted in Texas under seal. The declaration is from Carlos D. Cisneros regarding the AEA notice procedures. Okay, so how much time are they giving these people before they have FUETA them out? The declaration concerns the amount of notice the government is providing to individuals who are designated for removal under the AEA. And so we intend to object to their declaration being improperly sealed in the district court, but because it is sealed, we're not going to attach it here or describe its contents on the public docket. So they're just notifying the Supreme Court of these sealed filings. So we're developing the record, right? We're starting to see more about how much notice Trump is going to provide, what is in the notice, what boxes are checked, are they provided in English or in Spanish, and what process are they going through on a consistent basis before they get afuera. But we got reaction on a lot of this from Stephen Miller and more. Here's what the White House had to say.
So, look, you've cataloged the horrors that have been inflicted, the rapes, the beatings, the murders, the fentanyl deaths by the hundreds of thousands, the destruction of entire neighborhoods in this country because of the Democrat Party's policy of open borders these last 4 years. You mentioned the threat of international terrorism that is on our shores, the millions of gotaways who entered under the previous administration, on top of the millions more unvetted that were caught and released into the country, and the millions more that were allowed to either fly into the country or overstay their visas. It is a clear and present danger to the national security of this country. And we have federal judges telling President Trump that he can't deport these threats from our communities. This is the choice facing every American. Either we all side and get behind President Trump to remove these terrorists from our communities, or we let a rogue, radical left judiciary shut down the machinery of our national security apparatus. President Trump is going to see this through to his conclusion, and we will find and remove every terrorist from this country, and President Trump will make this nation safer than ever before, and he'll do it over the fighting and opposition of the Democrat Party, over the fighting and opposition of the communist left-wing judges, over the fighting and opposition of the far-left federal bureaucracy. He will not be deterred, Sean. He will see this through, I promise you.
All right.
So, look,
we're hoping that Pam Bondi and the DOJ can shore up their lines and respond with the force and fervor that we expect. Now, you may have seen this story percolating out there. A poll saying Americans say nearly 2-1, 50% to 28, 2-1, that Trump should bring Kilmar, wife beater, gangbanger, human trafficker, illegal alien Abrego Garcia back to the United States. You're kidding. They say the polls show it's clear and unequivocal. The Economist YouGov poll. Here are the answers. All listed there. They were excited about it. 2-1, 50 to 28%. Well, our friend Sean Davis said, no. That's a D+8 loaded question, obvious push poll. Here's what the question was. The Trump administration recently deported Kilmar Abrego Garcia to El Salvador despite a court order prohibiting his deportation. Do you believe Trump should bring Abrego Garcia back to the U.S.? Yeah, it's a pretty juiced question on that. And when you get into the details on that and you start to realize, oh, he got plenty of due process, and there wasn't really a court order prohibiting his deportation. It was a withholding of removal, and the withholding of removal was actually for Guatemala. And we've been duking it out over there on X, if you haven't followed us, debating on that point. And I'm still waiting for an order or a notice of errata, a correction, a minute entry, any line item anywhere that says he should not have been sent to El Salvador, because we read the opinion yesterday, and the opinion is very clear that he meant Guatemala because Guatemala is where his family was. And he spent a bulk of the opinion trying to articulate what protected social group Kilmar was a part of. It's just like any other group. It's like, oh, if you're a refugee, we can't send you back because you're refugeeing from something. What is it? Well, my group is under attack. Well, what is it? I don't know. It's, the trans in South Sudan or whatever, okay? Under attack. Oh, you're part of that group, the trans group that's under attack in the Sudan? Oh, we can't deport you back because your group is under attack. It's the same concept with Kilmar. His family was under attack. His nuclear family was his social group. The judge wrote that in there. What is the group? The immediate family of Kilmar Abrego. Great. Because of their pupusa business notoriety. And the pupusa business notoriety was what brought them the scorn of the gangs. They moved from El Salvador to Guatemala. And because Kilmar was a member of that group, he could not be returned to that group because the judge said that they were presently under attack in Guatemala. That's why the withholding of removal is for Guatemala. If the family was in El Salvador living there, it would have been for El Salvador. But you can't send him back to the group that's under attack. And we covered that at length yesterday, and some people still can't understand that concept on what that means. And they'll still defer to this scrivener's error or ministerial error that's out there. I've seen a lot of that response on X. It's just an error, which is hilarious that a judge is going to make an error multiple times, including in his analysis about where the family was living in a different country. In an immigration case, a judge is going to get the country wrong in an immigration case, in an order of withholding of removal. Going to get the country wrong. Oh, it's a scrivener's error. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So where's the correction then? If there's a minute entry, I'd like to see it, but it's not out there. Okay. Because the judge meant Guatemala. So we covered that at length. Just to follow up on that, even our friend JD Vance is communicating the truth about this. Clipped over from Julia. What's up, Jules? 31415. That's Pi. Here on X is JD.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia's wife has been very vocal about how she doesn't think he's getting due process, and she now also fears for her safety. Do you have a message to her specifically?
Well, I don't have a message to his wife. I mean, look, I just disagree with the idea that he hasn't been offered due process. He had a couple of immigration hearings. He had a valid deportation order. I think this idea that somehow that we couldn't deport an MS-13 gang member, and he was an MS-13 gang member, is preposterous. And I think there's actually a deeper issue going on, which is that you see some radical judges at the district court level who are trying to layer so much quote unquote process on top of the immigration system that it makes it impossible to function. We have over 20 million illegal aliens in the United States of America. Are we not allowed to deport them? Because if we're not allowed to deport them, then what these district courts are saying is fundamentally they reject the will of the American people as it was expressed in November of 2024. We just reject that. I believe the American people elected President Trump to do many jobs, but perhaps the most important job was to bring down the number of illegal immigration in this country. That's what he's trying to do. We're going to keep on doing it.
JD explaining it very simply. They say, but, and then come up with a bunch of justifications as to why Kilmar should be back in spite of all of the facts that he just laid down. Now, Jim Jordan, who's on the Judiciary Committee, who could be doing something about this. And this morning on the members only stream, we were commenting and having a discussion in my mind, at least, about what the Congress would look like if the Democrats were in charge. The amount of energy, hearings, subpoenas, letters, demands, bills, even if they wouldn't get them passed. New bill, we're introducing this, we're introducing this, we're introducing this. The amount of energy, coming out of a Democrat-led House in comparison to what we see right now, could you even imagine? It would be like night and day. Right now, I don't know what the Republicans are doing. They could be working, codifying this. They could be hitting all the media. We support Trump. We're going to pass this. President wants this done. We'll get it done. Move, 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 move. But instead, we're getting mostly nothing.
And they've asked to use other authority to deport migrants who are here illegally. We'll see how that plays out. We'll see how this case is argued in front of the court. I think it'll be a pretty quick decision that we get to. But the bottom line is the president ran on this issue. He told the American people what he was going to do. I think the Alien Enemies Act is entirely appropriate. It talks about predatory incursion. So many of these individuals are here are doing exactly that. So I think we just got to let this play out in court. But this administration is committed to doing what they told the American people they were going to do, what they were elected to do, and they've been carrying that out. Yeah. We'll continue to see how this plays out in our courts. And they've asked.
All right. So we'll just let it play out in the courts. We'll just sit aside, not do much of anything. And this administration is going to work hard for you. But what about you, Jim? I don't know if there's more to that interview. He's like, well, here's what Congress is going to do. Maybe there's more to it. But I kind of want to know what Congress is going to do and what the chairman of the Judiciary Committee is going to do. Hopefully there is more coming. But Tom Homan was out. He is a part of the administration. Lib's a TikTok clip this one for us.
Yes, sir.
And here is what Tom Homan said on with the Fox crew
subject to the statute needed to be given the opportunity to challenge their removal. To me, I interpret that as a sense of due process. How do you interpret that?
I think due process was given, like the Maryland father, the MS-13 terrorist that was removed. He had due process. He was ordered removed by two different immigration judges. But here's what they're doing. Here's the plan. The Biden administration overwhelmed the system. 10.5 million people came to the border. They know it's going to take years to get through the court docket. By then, they're hoping there's another Democratic administration in. They'll have U.S. citizen children. Then all of a sudden, nobody wants them removed. We're spoiling their plans to have future Democratic voters and through a census, have control of the House. Through a census vote, Democratic sanctuary cities get more seats in the House. This is their plan. That's why they overwhelmed the system. That's why they didn't detain them. When they detain them, they get a hearing in 35 days. They released them. Now it's going to take 5 to 7 years. They're going to keep playing this game through the immigration court, through appeal after appeal after appeal, district judge to slow us down, because their hopes is they'll gain power again, then they can warrant amnesty to 10 million illegal aliens that are released in this country illegally. That is their plan, and we're trying to remove these public safety threats and national security threats as quick as possible. They're putting every roadblock imaginable in front of us to prevent us from doing that.
They are. We're watching it here. We appreciate Tom Homan and the energy to keep this on track, because our own citizens are suing on behalf of other citizens from Latin American countries or whatever those people, wherever they were from, to undermine our own country, our immigration rules, our election rules, our trade rules. The list goes on and on. So shout out to Tom Homan and the administration for keeping the pressure on this. We'll be here to cover it. All right, my friends. Well, it has been a beautiful Thursday stream, and thank you for joining us. What a treat it has been. If you're just coming here, quick repeat on a recap of what we covered here. We talked about the election order and the judicial stay or pause, injunction rather, on the operation of Trump's new executive order. The executive order said, got to verify citizenship. The judge reversed it for now, put a pause on it. The case will continue to be briefed. Trump likely to start to appeal this now, since we're hitting that stage. But we read through it, listened to the judge's explanation on this. We read through how she called the nonpartisan plaintiffs, who are clearly partisan plaintiffs, nonpartisan plaintiffs, and they all sued, claiming injuries. If they are forced to have to verify citizenship, it's going to make it harder for them to do their job. They're not going to be able to register as many people, and the Democrats are going to suffer a concrete harm if they got to check status. So pretty pathetic. We also then talked about the trans case and how the trans ban in the military is now at the Supreme Court. Hegseth and the Trump administration making this change as soon as they came in, which is not much of a change, just a revert back to the original Mattis plan. And the Supreme Court now will have to weigh in on this and explain if they should just do what they did last time. And if the Supreme Court does something dramatically different than last time, that's going to be concerning, right? That's going to be a thing. We'll see if they do. But we read through that. D. John Sauer saying, allow the ban to continue, reverse what a Washington judge did in her injunction, and allow us to do our job. Then we got some quick updates on the deportation cases. We had Judge Zenas, who issued a short stay in the discovery battle. We already know there's a stay in the contempt battle in the Boasberg case. We've got secret filings under seal in the Supreme Court, JGG, and rather WMM case that we've talked about. And stuff's being filed under seal all over the place. So the administration sticking to their guns, enforcing the law, protecting America. We're happy to see it. Now, it's time to hear from you. And it's a beautiful day, my friends. I hope your week is unfolding amazingly well and you're accomplishing all the things you set your mind to. Thank you for supporting us today. And thanks for considering becoming a membo and joining us on the Membo streams. We do streams in the morning, 12 noon Eastern time, but we go live. We've got some great membos. It's a lot of fun, and we'd love it if you joined us. You can sign up on YouTube or on Locals at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Here's the latest. We got some nice donos coming in, my friends. Hey, we got this one. It says, hold on. Almost there, baby. Almost Friday. We're looking forward to that. We, of course, will be tomorrow. It's going to be a good one. I can feel it. Former says, I have a dream. I know that you've heard that before. Yeah, I think so. Pretty sure. How about we stack the SCOTUS with 6 additional confirmed constitutional judges for a total of 15, just like FDR? SCOTUS is so impotent they would be resolved or added to. If you want to speak to constitutional crisis, this is it. From our friend, former LEO. We got Mock Schnell. What's up, Mock Schnell? Hey, it was a good day for me today on my options in the market. Time to share some new membos. Man, we love good days in the market, especially for us here. Mock says, no need for mail-in. If we go back to the old way of voting, aka on Sunday, but we can just make voting a day national holiday. No one can say not to make it a national. They can't make it to the ballot box. Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to tighten up the elections, but the grift is in the gray area, right? You make your money in the madness. So that's where you really can capitalize on all of the election rules and all of the differences and all the delays and UOCAVA ballots and absentee ballots, and the list goes on and on. One old guy, what's up, says Latin was a Roman language, therefore Italian, not Spanish. Latin is a dead language. How did Spain become the origin of Latin? Should it be Italy? The original Latinos are Italian. Etymology is awesome. Yeah, Latin America, right? Like that's the whole region. So you could be a Latin American citizen of a country of Latin America, not be an American, right? Chubby. Hey, oh, the irony of a DC court handling a case they say is about separation of powers. I know, I almost fell out of my chair, Chubby. It's hilarious. Nice one, Judge. Lazy P, what's up, Lazy? Thanks for becoming a membo. We'll see you tomorrow on the members only stream. Grab the stream from this morning. What's up, one old guy? Says the Romans never conquered the Americas. Is that so? What if there's aren't there like some novels about that? Like they kind of just morphed into something else. If not, there should be. Sheila Poo, if they are citizens, they have nothing to worry about. If they're not citizens, they don't have standing, right? Well, I don't know which one you're talking about specifically, but the Latin American ones, I'm sure some members of we were kind of being facetious in that, but I'm sure there are some members who are citizens of that case. So there are probably some who are not citizens of America, who are citizens of Latin American countries, but there are probably some who are American citizens. They would just call themselves Latin American. Which is why I was asking about that hyphen, Sheila, thank you. Steel Manning. So you can be arrested for not presenting ID at any time to a cop, but voting without one is a constitutional right. Something like that, yeah. Yeah, driving without a license, right, would be driving without ID is often one. So maybe you have a license, but you don't have your ID. That's often a civil statute violation in most states. You don't have your wallet. Well, you got to have your wallet with you. Got to have your ID on you. So you can be prosecuted by the government for a crime like that, but if you want to be an illegal and vote, can't ask. One old guy says, lawsuits like this mean Hispanics can't get an ID because some of them have some kind of mental or cognitive problem because of their ethnicity. Well, I think that's what Kamala Harris said specifically. Yeah, Kamala said that they can't figure out how to register to vote or something. I think she said something. Yeah, people in rural locations don't know how to register to vote. Like they don't have internet or something. There was that clip. I said, wow, she really thinks everybody's a moron. She's really that dumb. Thank you for that. Crimson Viper says, if proof of citizenship is required to register to vote in all 50 states, then why do they need to sign again to do that again at the polls? Well, in many cases, you don't. So you can actually just request a federal-only ballot, and the federal-only ballot doesn't ask for citizenship. So there's like a bypass. It's proof of citizenship is not required in all 50 states. You can actually register to vote without providing proof of that. You just got to get a federal ballot. One old guy says, this lawsuit is insulting to me. And like, I think in the form, like you just check a box or something, but they don't validate it is the point. There's no validation. You just fill it out, sign the box, you're good. One old guy says, this lawsuit is insulting to me because I'm Hispanic and I'm in full favor of proof of citizenship. Well, are you sure you're Hispanic? Because they say that all Hispanics think the same. So if you don't think like them, the only logical deduction that one can make is you're not actually Hispanic. You might want to double check that because I don't know why. Otherwise, something's wrong. I mean, how could you be such a bigot if you want proof of citizenship? This is strange. Gene Moore, why is no one talking about Garcia failing his claims against torture removal? The judge said he can be removed to El Salvador. The line is directly above the conclusion in the order. I'll take a second look at that, Gene Moore. I don't know. But you know what? My reading comprehension on this one's been pretty bad. I said I was going to get hooked on phonics yesterday, so I got to work on that. So I'll have to read it again. I don't know. I'll take a look at it. Funny. My understanding was the claims against torture was saying he couldn't be removed to El Salvador because you couldn't trust that the government there wouldn't torture him. But you might be right. Yeah, you might be right. I got to look at it again. Who knows? Thank you for flagging it for me, Gene Moore. I got a little bit of Kilmar on the brain. I was up way late last night responding to people on X and again this morning, so it's been fun. Mock Schnell, what's up, Mock Schnell? 50 membos. Join it up. Love those markets, baby. What's up? Cassie Gendron coming in. Nicole Hatfield. What's up, salty old guy? Nancy Newton, Pyramid 7, Petty Eddie. We got Luke Ahead. Brian Weber. What's up, Sex? We got Kevin, Michelle Young, Adam Caperton, JP Revamped, Betsy Merrill. What's up, Sean Murray? But it's a dry heat in Arizona with the Arizona flag. It's a dry heat. That's true. We all say it. Hey, Starkle Muir. What's up? Freya's joining us. Jeffrey Smiley. What's up, Just Jewel? We got Rizka's Beloved, Christine McCoy, Paul A., Barb Rumford. What's up, Kenneth Wadner? DS is here. Sally Beth McMaster. What's up, John Burnett? Callie's here. Brian Nelson, Random Prime, JL, Tim Wood, Cindy, Griffey, Amazing Trace, Jay Smith, Stephanie Herring, Lady T. What's up, Be Cool? JT Goldfish, Cyber Chaos, Mom's Wholesome Videos. What a nice channel that sounds like. Charles Coe, DC Vita, Awesome Pursuit, Jessica Mai, GDV 8819, and Topes Gifted Membos, courtesy of Mock Schnell in the house. And thank you, Mock, for doing that. Bringing in 50 new membos. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Can't wait to meet you. Thank you, Mock Schnell. Hey, Pinochet's Helicopter Tours says, Rob, concerning biometrics in the Army overseas, we utilized the systems called BATS/HIDE. It records your retina, fingerprints, and DNA. It's how DHS tracked minors traveling with adults during 45's term. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. No, they can track, I think, everybody. Did you see that article about Palantir, I think, is developing an immigration OS system? Like, it's going to, they know who's here illegally and whatnot. They just don't want to track it and do anything about it until recently. So I think Palantir is doing it too. Yeah. Thank you for that, Pinochet. Good comment. Heavy Johnny. Oh, Heavy Johnny. Whoa. Heavy Johnny. I think this is Whirlpool. Wait a minute. No. This is not Whirlpool. This is Heavy Johnny who wants to be Thor. Get out of here. Do we have another? We have another astrophotographer in the house. Holy moly. Look at this image, my friends. Heavy Johnny says, hey, Blood Moon. Hey, Whirlpool, because we the astrophotographers of our community. We have nicknames now. We're working on our handshakes too. What's up? We got Thor's joining us. Here's a link to an image I shot of Thor's helmet, which is NCG2359. There's a link to the image on his Instagram. That is awesome, dude. Super cool. All right, so we've been getting into it. Whirlpool's been giving me, Blood Moon, a little bit of grief on this. He's like, there's galaxies outside. I told you this yesterday. He's like, maybe you should get your galaxy off of your treadmill that you never use, where your jujitsu gi hangs out next to the sauna that you haven't turned on in 6 months. I'm like, damn, son. Gonna have to find a therapist for that one. But Thor, welcome to the party. You're accepted into our group. Thor, it's a pretty cool nickname. There's something called Thor's helmet. That's a pretty good one. We were struggling a little bit with Whirlpool because his first share, I think, was like Needle. Like, we're not going to call you Needle, Whirlpool's pretty cool. Thor's pretty cool too. All right, shout out to our astrophotographers in the house. Love to see your gear over there, Heavy Johnny. Super cool to see you. And if you want to come check it out, or if you don't want to join on locals or come chat, I think Whirlpool is also on Lodge, in the Lodge chat. So shout out if you want to go check that out at the Lodge. It's free. Pinochet, thanks for sharing that. Welcome, Thor. What's up? Pinochet's Helicopter Tours says bats hide would be a huge violation of U.S. citizens' rights, but those protections do not extend to illegals, though, due to how invasive it is, because it is sources and methods. It's not advertised. Yeah. And the government has so much data, on taxes and all sorts of transactions and businesses and what they're like. They know who the people are. They're just hiding them. Thank you for that, Pinochet. And I agree with you. I don't know that we want to live in a super surveillance state or anything. Like, I don't want to, suffer domestic surveillance to get the illegals, but we should know, we have a good idea of what's going on with the illegals. So just use the immigration system and you'll be fine, because they're all in a lot. About 10 million of them are in there, got checked and let go. Steel Manning says, how do they write 120 pages so fast? Is it Chat GPT? Well, she's had some time to work on it, but a lot of it, a lot of it's copy and paste. Like, you're just copy and pasting case law. Don't get me wrong, it takes a lot of time. Like, you've got to write something like that. I would dread it. You always you want to go find the smart lawyers to do that stuff. Okay, you like to write, you're good. You like to research and connect the dots and pin cite everything. Okay, great. So you can just assemble this. Here's what I want to cite. Great, right. So I don't know how the judges do it. They've got clerks, they've got staff, they've got judicial assistants and people who are clerking for them, right? Who want to go get a job somewhere. So they clerk, they do all the heavy lifting, and judges have a glass of wine and assemble it. What's up, Steel Manning? Can we make Hatua Jeffries a thing? I don't really know what that means exactly. Like, she's going to spit on Hakeem? What? I don't know. I don't think she wants to do that. Pinochet says, I relish in the fact that bats' hide is unavoidable and extremely invasive, and no lawyer or judge can stop it. I never even heard of it. Yeah, and it's like a military operation, so it's not even like domestically reviewable, probably. Well, I don't know. Thank you for that, Pinochet. It sounds interesting. Is there like an article on that? What's up, Bard Bernardo? Hey, Bernardo. Burrito Franco in the house. Good to see you, Bernardo. Thanks for joining up. Welcome aboard. Will Crump. Only when Trump is involved is it speculative harm sufficient to gain a TRO. For crying out loud, Congress and SCOTUS, do something. I'm sure you didn't say it quite like that, but I understand the emotion. What's up, Steel Manning? I have an idea. How about mandatory carry requirements so you use a gun app to prove to prove you're a citizen? Yeah, all citizens get a mandatory citizen gun. This is your ID. Just wear it around your neck if you have to. Anyone found carrying without ID gets arrested or deported. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So, like, maybe not an official citizenship gun, but it's a gun. I pulled you over. Sure, Your Honor. Yeah, sure. Here you do. It's right here. Oh, that's a nice one. It's a big one. Here, let me see. Where's the ID? Oh, it's in here. It's just, you got to move the slide over. Oh, yeah. Oh, Robert. Nice to see you. Oh, okay, here you go, sir. Thank you back. Okay. Have a nice night. Hey, Will Crump. When wording an appellate brief, can a lawyer ever just outright call the judge a bold-faced liar? Nonpartisan plaintiffs. Are you kidding me? No, I'm not kidding you. It's real. It's real. It's really in there. You can call her a liar. It's probably not go well for you, because she might be unhappy about that. And you got like a duty of, conduct and, what would that fall under? Like a duty of candor and professionalism, rules of professional conduct, something like that. But that was a nice little label that she has slapped on a bunch of partisan hacks. Hey, what's up, Steel Manning? Can DOJ charge judges with insurrection? Yeah, I'm sure they could, if there was evidence of their insurrection. Does this activity meet that? I don't think so, because they've got plausible deniability. As long as they're making legal arguments and you can say, that is a crap legal argument and you're a hack. That's allowed in our country. You're allowed to be a judicial hack. It's allowed. What's up, Pinochet? Do you think the ACLU and the trans judge would take my case if I sued Homeland for not hiring my mid-40s behind for ICE removals in Massachusetts? That's another thing, too. It's like if the Supreme Court comes out the other way, you can just reverse that. Well, yeah, whatever your medical condition is, you can just say, no, I'm got to be hired for this position or else I'll sue you. I think you have to start a league, though, Pinochet. So a league of Pinochets, and then you can sue. Pinochet, I demand a Homeland job in my state where I can arrest politicians and police in the state for 18 U.S. Code 1512C violations. I like it. League of Pinochet. Hey, Mock Schnell, 50 more membos coming in. Thank you, Mock Schnell, for doing it, man. Those markers, baby. Hey, Liberty's coming in. Jody Plocker, what's up? Jelena M, what's up? Frosted Sleep, Brian Donovan, Malisha Shimi. We got Joshua Barron, Daryl Dennis, Bob Taylor. We got American Jane shouting out, David Nelson, L. Bracknell, KHR, Triple H Custom Knives. Man, I love custom knives. Joshua Manor, what's up? Kelly Parker, Raven Wings, Todd Huber, Freedom Cast is here. Denise SoCal, what's up, Tom Lavati? Reformed Convict is here. Kimberly, Sanella O, Heather Fuller, Alan Lanham. We got Ironhead, what's up? A lot to learn. Non-Stopolis, Carl Speckler. We got Adam K. Ron is here. Shannon. Cindy Kiyaki is here. Jason Carlton. What's up, Brian Galligan? Kama Sutra. Ironhead again. A lot to learn. And Jason Carlton and more gifted membos courtesy of Mock Schnell. Mock Schnell, thanks for doing that. That's a lot of new membos. Welcome aboard, new membo friends. Hey, Steel Manning says, seriously, if judges are usurping Article 2 powers and blocking constitutional orders and authority of the executive, if the DOJ bring charges, is it not valid? Well, if the DOJ says that, like if there's like an active conspiracy that they're usurping the powers, but right now the legal argument is that they're not doing that. They're just issuing orders that are a normal part of the check and balance process, right? And there's supposed to be some blood sport here. Like, I also want to be clear about that. A lot of this is kind of normal stuff. Like, not what these judges are doing. There's an active campaign. There's hundreds of lawsuits. They've got Democrats funding this, ACLU. I mean, like, the lawfare is insane. But you do expect the branches, when they're operating appropriately, to fight back against each other. This is part of the problem that we've had in this country, is they've been too comfortable and they've all gotten fat and lazy. Congress delegates something to the executive takes it over. Then everybody just gets on the grift train and all going along to get along. You want some, like Trump, to come in here and say, I have all this power. And then some people, no, you don't. Yes, I do. Or the Congress to come in. And that's what Trump's doing with Congress. Congress said, we passed all these rules. Congress said, we have more power than the president. No, you don't. I'm not following that. That's unconstitutional. That's unconstitutional. So he's pushing back, which causes the lawsuits to come back. And so it's like this natural ebb and flow. And we're very happy that Trump is maximally flexing this, because that dude has the energy to see it through to the end, whereas others would buckle at the first instance, right? At least Trump's going to hold the line. So to bring a charge against a judge, like, I'm not saying you couldn't make the argument. You could absolutely make the argument. But if you did that, you'd be prosecuting a federal judge, and I think you'd see Trump impeached personally. I think there'd be an impeachment move to say now he's prosecuting judges who disagree with him, rather than just letting it mature, go up to the Supreme Court, see what the Supreme Court does. If the Supreme Court issues an order that's over the line, Trump can just do it anyways, or pardon the people who are in trouble, or do something else. So it's a little bit of a cat and mouse. I know how frustrating it is. Believe me, we're here every day. Hopefully you can feel it coming through when we read this crap. But I still think, indicting a judge for that would be fatal. What's up? Andy Foster says Abby Lowell is representing Tish James. What a joke. Yeah, Abby Lowell was the dude who represented Hunter Biden. Remember that? Abby's a very aggressive attorney. He's perfect for Tish. Oh, gosh, what a match made in heaven. Muffin Rando. Hey, what's up, Muffin Rando? Says, please show some love to the O'Connell family and their give, send, go, which we support this. So here's the link. Let me drop this link in, and we can even pin this in the YouTube chat, wherever this is. So my friends, if you'd like to make a dono and support this family in need, we're going to pin this in the YouTube chat, so you can go check that out. But disabled mom, trying the best for her daughter, could use some love. If you're in a good position where you can make a dono, we got some members here sharing this. K Bean shared this morning with our members. So check that out as well. And thank you, Donut, for sharing that link. So we got that pinned up. Here, I'll pin Donuts, because that's a much more appropriate link. So we'll pin that up. Thank you, Donut, for sharing that. Boom. So that's pinned up over there. So if you can, share some love over with the McConnell family, and we hope they get back on their feet. Prayers for them. What's up, Steel Manning? Helicopter parties are fine, the Pinochet kind. Yeah, Pinochet's helicopter tours. Tons of fun. Go up there. It's a ride you'll never forget. It's a ride to die for. Hey, E-Fly. What's up, E-Fly? Thanks for becoming a member, E-Fly. We'll see you tomorrow on the Members Only stream. Yeah, Mock Schnell says, hey, Rob, great show as usual. Big shout out to your mods and clippers. Tell me about it. I know I've been giving them a lot of work lately. I know. It's true. Donut Mind Me has been working overtime. We appreciate Donut. We have the best mods. Such an amazing team of people who just support what we're doing. It's awesome. We appreciate Donut John for today. K Bean, Carrie B, clipping in the mornings. Awesome. Thank you, Mock Schnell, for shouting them out. They're amazing. Hey, Rick D. It's very simple. There is no constitutional right to serve in the U.S. military. And they will, reframe it as discrimination and due process. I think you're right. I think the Supreme Court has really no choice but to come back out and just stamp this, just like they did the last time. But I think the key insight will be if they don't do that, or if there's something that qualifies it, it's going to, oh, what else is the Supreme Court going to change? Thank you, Rick. What's up, Sandy? The New Mexico judge who resigned after the TVA member was in his home has been arrested with his wife. Oh man. Okay, so you guys have been flagging this story for me. Been kind of waiting for this, like letting it marinate in the back burner. But wow, that's amazing. So he got arrested with his wife. Wow. Judges hanging out with gangbangers. Incredible. Hey, Heavy Johnny says Fort Hood Garrison commander was suspended. She was one who wouldn't put Trump and Vance on the COC's board on the chain of command. This woman, Army Reserve officials say missing photos is not related to any misconduct, and she was suspended administratively and that they were corrected. That's interesting. Interesting story. That's from Task and Purpose. Cool. What's up? Hey, we got a baby in the house. What's up? Gus Swayze is joining us. What's up, Gus Swayze? Good to see you. 9 months, baby. Got a new baby in the house. Happy new baby to all Watcher fam in the house. Thank you, Gus. Thanks for being here for 9 months. That's a long time. It's a full baby. Hey, Don McLaughlin says my birth went unnoticed. LOL. Well, sometimes we get we have missed this one for a while. 9 months. So yeah, you're like 5 months old. We just noticed you. Yikes. How you doing? How's the baby doing? Well, we're grateful to have you. We got a new baby. Hey, look, everyone. Don, sorry we missed your birth, but thanks for being here for 14 months. We'll try not to miss your birthday. See, Rob on Rumble says, it will be interesting to see what Ketanji will vote for on this, the trans thing. Though it's inevitable, she will probably go against Trump. She can't even define what a woman is. I know, and they said that only women can get pregnant in there. So people just probably lost it. Golden Gaming. Hey, working on a third baby, don't tell me what I can or can't do. I won't even try. Working on the third baby, 23 months as a member. Man, I like your aggressiveness there, Golden Gaming. That baby's coming whether we like it or not. Can't wait to meet him. Thank you, Golden, for being here for 23 months. You're amazing. Doan, is the stay on the Discovery meant to buy enough time to iron out the El Salvador-Guatemala confusion? I don't know. And the critics of my point, right, just say, well, Rob, it's been adopted. They've adopted it. The Solicitor General adopted it. It's in all the filings. That might be true. I don't know why they did that or what their justification was for that. If they have another document that says El Salvador, we'd love to see it. If Kilmar's team has it, we'd love to see it. If it's a mid-entry that's on a docket somewhere, just show us it. But I don't think it exists because the judge's position was right about that. But I think that they have adopted it in practice to this point. So if I was betting, I'd say it's more likely that they're probably trying to facilitate something, like he got moved to, I don't know, maybe his family in Guatemala. Like maybe they'll actually move him to Guatemala, which is where the withholding said he couldn't go. I don't know. But all the sealed stuff, I think if it was the El Salvador, Guatemala, you would also expect that they would publish that, right? Somebody would publish it. Or if the DOJ had a form that said Guatemala, they'd release it and make that obvious. If Kilmar's team had El Salvador, like anything concrete that said El Salvador, they'd release it, but they don't have it. So yeah. What's up? We got this one. Pinochet says the poll is sus. The Economist is an openly communist socialist rag. The Constitution and communism cannot coexist. We are socialist enough. Yeah, and they're all just communists when you root it down. Lowest common denominator, boil it down, commies. Sheila Poo, it goes back to the fact that their first action on American soil was an illegal act. They stepped onto the soil illegally. I know they keep wanting to paper over that, Sheila Poo, and they only become criminals if they've murdered someone 3 times. Then they say, oh, okay, now we'll prosecute you. Like that one dude who they released 7 years early after killing the 2 teenagers in California. Jeff Monhe. These leftist activist judges are trying to prevent Trump's agenda in deporting criminal illegals. 100% right, yeah. And they're working overtime. And the ACLU gangbang lawyers are doing it too. And where's all the money coming from? There's a lot of it. Thank you for the dono, Jeff. Sheila Poo, Congress needs to take action. Well, Jim Jordan seems like he's pretty comfortable there, just kind of passing everything off to everyone else. But defund the districts where these anti-constitutional judges are located and end this crap. Really tired of them sitting on their booties and their buttocks and doing nothing. Yeah, it does start. It is starting to look pretty dang weak. Hey, Steel Manning saying the grift is in the chaos. This channel explained. Yeah, it's a pretty good phrase, right? The grift is in the gray area. The grift is in the chaos. I don't know if you're calling our channel a grift or we're just kind of analyzing what's happening. But yeah, I mean, the madness is where the game is played, right? The stuff that's settled is settled. Everybody's fighting for that middle area. That's what a lot of litigation is fighting for that. I think Latino derives from Roman Catholicism. Oh, I don't know. What about Latinx? Where'd that come from? The View. Pinochet, Latin is not a dead language, okay? Inter arma enim silent legis are still words to live by. I don't even know what I said. Probably going to go to jail now. Sharpie guy, how about all of us get on the phone and call Jim Jordan and say, Jim, express your thoughts. Call his congressional line and do it now. Chris, according to Sharpie guy. Chris Fitton, what's up, Chris? Welcome aboard, Chris, as a supporter. Great to have you. The Jackals of Terra Argentum is joining us. What's up, the Jackals of? Says, these leftists think we are all one people. As an Argentine, that offends me deeply. Us South Americans have nothing in common with those Central American barbarians. Just kidding. No, I know. And that's the thing. It's like they treat everybody as they're interchangeable because that's most useful to them. Oh, you're a Latinx person, so you have to believe this or else. Even Biden said that, right? Like, you ain't black. You ain't black. What? Remember that phrase? And like, well, that's not what he meant, you know. Okay. If you support Trump, it's like, that's what they do. They treat everybody the same. Pathetic. Angela Farrow, what's up? Says, hey there, actual astronomer here. Listen to you while I'm fixing the observatory, loving your content. Actual astronomer. Okay, Angela, really great to see you. Thank you for saying that. Hello to you. Thanks for jumping in the chat. Actual astronomer fixing the observatory. That's amazing. So that's super cool. Thank you, Angela, for saying hello. Angela Farrow. Great to see you. Okay, so my friends, check out Actual Astronomer and our friend Angela jumping in the chat. How cool is that, man? It blows my mind what you guys are sharing, what these photos are showing, right? These images, like, oh my gosh, it's all out there. Wild, Angela. So looking forward to learning more about what you do, what you publish, what you shoot, how you do it. Thanks for saying hi. Super cool. Shout out to our astronomer friends. What's your nickname? Oh, Actual Astronomer. Can we call you a galaxy name too? Thank you for saying hi. Michael Cornelio. What's up, Michael? Very nice dono, Michael. Thanks for this. Says, the courts had no problem with sending suspected terrorists to Guantanamo to waterboard them, but not MS-13 membos? Yeah, and there's a lot on that. Like, so think about what they did to the person that Obama took out in the drone strike, who was an American citizen. You might not like him, Anwar al-Awlaki or whatever his name was, but he was a citizen, and the executive branch decided to drone strike him and kill him without a single due process act of all, by a court or a judge or anything. Didn't even go through an Article 2 immigration court. Or Gonzalo Lira, where was the ACLU lawyers filing lawsuits to get him out of Ukrainian prisons or something, demand the Biden State Department do something about him? Nothing. Nothing. But this dude, who's MS-13, gets Senate visits down to his cell in El Salvador from a very, very CIA-adjacent Senator Van Hollen. So what is all that about? Don't really know. But it might just be their constituency is now mostly illegal aliens and their sub-constituencies. So they've got no choice but to jump in and fight for them, even if they are gangbangers. It's a strange political wagon to latch onto, but they've done it. Thanks for the nice dono, Michael. Michael Cornelio, appreciate it. Deluxe Knight. I agree with S.A. Grave about being legal means you should have nothing to worry about. Also, if you identify as Latin American, then please go live there. We are all Americans here, regardless of our genetic history. Continuing to allow illegal aliens to remain here is a slap in the face to every American that fought to be one and went through the proper process. Great comment from Deluxe Knight, Farming Force out there feeding us. Milo Phone Bill. I'm a legal immigrant and naturalized citizen. I'm an American now. Thank you, Milo Phone Bill, for saying that. You're not a 50 different hyphenated American. That's great. You're just an American. Thanks for doing it the right way and being a part of our country and loving what we do here. Hey, it's Whirlpool. Whirlpool shared this one. Oh my gosh. Welcome, Thor. Actual astronomer. Please meet Whirlpool, aka rub some dirt on it. Looks like this is his photo of Thor's head. Look at that, my friends. Just look at it. That's a real thing. Like that's out there in the sky. What's going on in there? What's happening? What little creatures are bubbling around in there? What's happening over there? Super cool. All right, Thor, rub some dirt on it. They're actually real astrophotographers. But I took a photo once of the moon. One old guy. A few good men, liar, liar, pants on fire, defense. Yeah, that's a good tactic. We see a lot of that on this channel. Tony Hay, what's up, Tony Hay? Thanks for bringing in one membo. Paul Rounds. Great to see you, Tony Hay. Welcome, Paul Rounds. Deluxe Knight says, I do enjoy everything is Trump's fault. I enjoy it because that means it is his fault for all of this winning. Yeah, it's the hydrogen peroxide in the wound thing. Okay, that burning's kind of uncomfortable, but it's also awesome because you're getting out the infection. More here. What's up? 5 membos coming in, courtesy of More Here. Big welcomes coming out to Disgruntled Grunt, Alyssa Lear. What's up, Rebecca Anderson? Margaret is here. And Wood Spirit 98 gifted membos, courtesy of More Here. Thank you, More Here, for doing that. One old guy and his opinions say, a republic is designed to have political friction. Yeah, you don't want anybody to have too much power operating too efficiently, because if they do that, then they just violate all your rights immediately. Hey, rub some dirt in it on it. Says, hey, Thor, maybe we can encourage Blood Moon, that's me, to drag his treadmill outside by the spa. Okay. Maybe we can encourage Blood Moon to drag his treadmill out by the spa, push the gi out of the way, point the Sea Star at something. Keep sending him targets. Look at that, man. And that one is wild. Okay. That's the horse, right? That's like the horseshoe or the seahorse. What is that one called? I don't know, man. It just blows my mind. It almost feels like you're looking. You're zooming so far out. You're almost zooming so far in, if that makes sense. Like it's wild. It blows my mind. It actually leaves me speechless looking at these photos and trying to fathom what it is. I can't even talk when I see them. All right. Anyways, thank you for sharing that, Whirlpool. All right, Thor. Crazy. Super cool. Doan, Lowell represented Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. Did he? Abby Lowell? He's not a dumb lawyer. Like he goes hard. That dude plays hard for sure. We've seen a lot of his filings and he gets, I think, a little over aggressive. He's gotten bit for that a couple times, but he doesn't care. He's like, there's no consequences for if I'm getting too aggressive, which is generally true. Like rather than play conservatively, just like, don't give an inch, just go get it. Don't. Thank you for that. Ewok Village Farm. What's up? Thanks for becoming a membo and a supporter. We got this one from one old guy. Says Homan is making good on wait and see what happens soon with that New Mexico judge. Was he also waiting on that? Waiting and seeing? Yeah, judges just don't resign. Okay. Oh crap. He's like, I better resign so I don't get busted. Like he's running for the hills, and they were coming. Rick D. Hey, not sure if you saw this in the lodge chat or not. Oh, no, I think I did see it, Rick. I was like sitting down checking the chat before the show. I was kind of back to back today, but thanks for posting it in the lodge chat. Yeah, from our friend Amuse, who's on X at Amuse. The Maryland man isn't a father. This was a question. The biological father of the children, Edwin Ramos, filed for custody of the kids. Now the question was it for all 3 kids or was it for the 2? Like 2, definitely he's not the biological father of. The third one, I thought I saw that she was pregnant, and I presumed it was his, but maybe not. Hey, Spudman says new action on the DOD trans case. The response application requested by Justice Kagan is due 5 p.m. Let's see. I think I might still have that one queued up on the trans case. We got the docket queued up. Yeah, here it is. So we got something fresh out of the oven. Let's see what it was. Yeah, here. The response to the application by Kagan due 5 p.m. May 1. So about a week from now, they got to respond. So no stay at the moment, right? So this will still be open for another week. So the stay has not been granted thus far. Thank you, Spudman, for that. And good stuff. My friends, thank you so much for these donos. Thank you to our amazing mods clipping these for us. Welcome to actual astronomer in the house. Meet Thor and meet Whirlpool. We're glad to have you here. Shout out to our astrophotographers out there. That's very cool. Maybe we could start something on the lodge over there and share photos or something. That's an idea. All right. And we're thinking about memes too. Would you be down for a memes section on the lodge where we could post spicy but appropriate and mostly family friendly memes at the lodge? Another idea kicking around. Not my idea. Somebody brought that up. Let's see who's joining us on X, my friends, before we wrap it up and go over to locals for our members only after party. Hey, what's going on? We got Mini Tika. Thank you, Mini Tika, for sharing the Rumble link. Fred Petamonte says, oh, wow, amazing. This is so smart. Fred started a 501c3, says, I started a new 501c3 nonprofit. It's called the Coalition League and Alliance Association for the Affiliation Partnership in accordance with and for something. Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. And you should just say in America or for democracy, and then you'll get $1 billion from Stacey Abrams, or climate change, just for climate change, something to solve the future of the planet. $2 billion. Hey, Resri says, since I found you, I've watched almost every video. Thank you for doing that, Resri. Let's see where this goes. I've been following the court cases through Professor Cleveland, Margot. We love, she's amazing. But sometimes I don't understand all the details, but you make everything so easy to understand. It's a good laugh. Thanks for all the hard work. Thank you for that, Resri. Yeah, Margot Cleveland's amazing. Okay, if you're not following her, it's like a must. Brian Slater, great to see you. See you back here when you can watch the show. John Cobb says, it would be nice if we could sue to stop checking ID to buy alcohol and everything else. Virginia Evans is in the house. Great to see you. What's up, TJ King? Biden ejected war fighters based on the jab, based on iffy and unproven science. They ejected everybody. Actual science was castigated. So why can't Mattis and Mattis's science be dispositive when we're talking about the trans issues? Great questions. Great points. Great to see our friends on X. Follow us over there if you want to check it out. Follow other friends over there to check them out. And thanks for posting on the X platform. Okay, so my friends, we'll leave it there. Hey, Heavy Johnny says, hey, Whirlpool. Hey, Whirlpool. So this is Thor. Says, summer's coming up. Rob is going to have to get some great wide field targets for that little sea star. They're calling my sea star little. Do you see that? They're talking to each other, calling my sea star little in their DMs on the show, on the live stream. It's unbelievable. We need to give him some wide field targets in the Cygnus. Rob, look at Orion. We were talking about Orion's belt. I think when I was younger, I think I looked at Orion's belt from Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona, and we looked into the middle star, and there's like actually like a nebula up there, right? Something like that. We saw that. Oh, look at this, man. Crazy. Heavy Johnny, Thor sharing that. Okay, so check out some of his stuff too. He's got an Instagram over there where he's posting his photos, and Whirlpool's posting his photos. What's going on out there, man? What's going on in this giant galaxy? Super cool. All right, so thanks for sharing that. All right, so we're going to continue to dig into that. I'm going to go get my little sea star out off the shelf, point at the sky. All right, so my friends, thank you so much for being here. What a fun stream. Love all of our new astrophotographer friends coming out of the woodworks. Very nice to meet everybody. How fun is that? We will pause right there for the evening. Of course, we want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths who keep things nice and orderly around here. Shout out to K-Bean, Donut Mind Me, thanks for clipping, Carrie B, Playing Hooky, Dog Digger, Janak over on the Rumbles. We got Jigam Geegum, our meme smith, Just Rhonda, our purveyor of fine emojis, and Elliot, our doc master, keeping things nice and orderly. And my friends, it has been a beautiful stream, of course. Membos, we're coming back tomorrow morning, 12 noon Eastern. If you want to join us on YouTube or on Locals, we'd love to see you there. Locals, stick around for a few minutes. We'll do our after party, hang out and debrief for a little bit. Otherwise, my friends, it has been a treat and an honor. Thanks for sharing these. We, of course, are coming back tomorrow to get into it again. It's going to be a beautiful Friday, and in order to do it appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.